poor young woman missed her job interview to help a woman in a wheelchair, and that woman ended up wanting her as a daughter-in-law for her millionaire son. Before we begin this story, let us know in the comments, which city are you watching from? And don't forget to rate this story from 0 to 10 at the end. Enjoy the story? Ivy Morris was walking quickly down the sidewalk, clutching a blue folder in her hands. The sound of her heels on the pavement echoed like a rushing clock. Click, clack, click, reminding her that time was not on her side. The interview at the Hilton Grand Hotel was her one chance to turn things around. After months of being unemployed, this was the only thing standing between her and unpaid rent. But of course, the universe had other plans. "Please, can someone help me? The wheel's stuck." The desperate voice came from the street. Ivy paused, glanced at her watch, and muttered, "Oh no, not now." She turned and saw an elderly woman in a wheelchair, struggling to free one of the wheels caught in what looked more like a bear trap than a manhole. The poor woman was pulling and pushing, grumbling all the while as the chair squeaked. "Hold on, ma'am. I'll help you," Ivy said, rushing over. The woman sighed in relief. "Thank you, dear. I thought I'd be stuck here for the rest of my life." Ivy crouched down and tugged at the wheel. Nothing. Tried again. Still nothing. "What is this thing, a hole or a trap?" the woman chuckled. "Seems like fate wants us to become friends," Ivy huffed, pushing harder. "Fate could have helped me get to that interview instead." After 5 long minutes and a leg muscle practically screaming for help, the wheel finally popped free with a loud clack that scared a nearby pigeon. "There you go, free as a bird," Ivy said, out of breath and sweating. "You're an angel, sweetheart. What's your name?" "Ivy Morris." "Nice to meet you, Ivy. I'm Elizabeth Cooper." "Pleasure to meet you, Mrs. Elizabeth. But now I really have to run or I'll miss my job interview." And she ran. When she reached the hotel, it was 11:05. The interview had been scheduled for 11. The doorman gave her a sympathetic look. "Sorry, miss, they've already finished." She hurried up the steps, knocking on the glass door. "Please, I'm Ivy Morris. Something unexpected happened." The manager appeared, cold and impatient, holding a stack of resumes. "Miss Morris, the interview ended 5 minutes ago." "But it was only 5 minutes. I helped a woman." "We're not hiring kindness, miss. We're hiring punctuality." The words hit Ivy like a punch. She had nothing to say. She just stood there, watching the man walk away. She walked out of the hotel with teary eyes. The blue folder now felt like it weighed a ton. "Great, I saved someone's day and ruined mine," she muttered. But fate, with its strange sense of humor, wasn't done yet. "Ivy, wait." She turned around. Elizabeth Cooper was coming down the sidewalk in her wheelchair, now being pushed by a well-dressed driver. "Did you get the job, dear?" "No, I was 5 minutes late." Elizabeth frowned, truly upset. "Then it was my fault." "No need to worry, ma'am. It's my own fault. That hole was tricky, but the clock was worse." Elizabeth looked at her for a long moment, then gave a small smile. "You have a good heart, and I believe people like you deserve opportunities." "Opportunities?" Ivy raised an eyebrow, suspicious. "Yes, how about we go grab a coffee? I'd like to talk to you." "Oh, you don't have to. You've got your own things to do." "Sweetheart, my only appointment today is with fate." Ivy blinked, confused, but agreed. At the cafe on the corner, Elizabeth ordered 2 cappuccinos and began talking as if she had known Ivy for years. "You're determined, empathetic. Do you know what you're missing? A job?" "Exactly, and maybe a husband. You're not wearing a ring, so no husband, right?" Ivy nearly choked on her coffee. "My life's already chaotic enough on my own. I don't have time for dating." Elizabeth gave a sly smile. "Just wait. I want you to meet my son." A few minutes later, Derek Cooper walked in, tall, perfectly dressed in a gray suit, and looking like he was late for a million more important things. "Mom, what happened?" The driver said it was urgent. "Sit down, Derek. This is Ivy Morris, the young woman who helped me earlier today." "Nice to meet you," he said flatly. Elizabeth folded her hands, pleased. "Ivy, my son needs a wife." Silence. The 3 of them stared at each other. "Mom," Derek started, laughing in disbelief. "You're joking, right?" "No, I'm completely serious." "Serious? You brought in a complete stranger off the street to marry me?" Ivy raised her hands. "Oh no, wait a second. I just pulled a wheelchair out of a pothole. I'm not trying to marry anyone because of that." Elizabeth, calm and steady, replied, You help me without expecting anything in return. That says a lot about your character, and that's exactly what Derek needs, someone to remind him what it means to be human. Derek sighed, stunned. Mom, come on, I have a reputation, a company, a life. And you could lose all of it if you don't agree. His eyes widened. What did you just say? Exactly what you heard. If you don't agree to marry Ivy, you'll be removed from the board of Cooper Enterprises. That's blackmail, he shouted, jumping to his feet. Call it whatever you want, dear. I call it motherly love. Ivy stood frozen. Excuse me, is this a nightmare? Because it feels way too real. It's very real, sweetheart, Elizabeth answered with a calm smile. And it'll be great for both of you. Derek ran his hands over his face. This is completely insane. I don't even know this woman. Perfect. Then you'll have time to get to know her after the wedding. Ivy stood up, outraged. Mrs. Cooper, with all due respect, I am not marrying a complete stranger, especially not a grumpy stranger who clearly wishes he were on another planet. I really do wish I were somewhere else, Derek said, but I'm not grumpy. Then Elizabeth dropped the final bomb. Ivy, if you accept, I'll guarantee you a steady job, a good salary, and your own apartment. It's just a contract. No romance, unless you want it. Just a partnership. Ivy hesitated. The words steady job and salary sounded like music from heaven. She looked at Derek, who was shaking his head in disbelief. All right, she said, taking a deep breath, but it has to be temporary. Temporary? Derek repeated, horrified. You're seriously going along with this? Looks like you'll have to go along with it too. Elizabeth clapped her hands, delighted. Excellent. You two are getting married tomorrow. What? They both shouted at the same time. Elizabeth just smiled. Oh, you'll thank me later. Why, trust me. And at that very moment, Ivy Morris had the strange feeling she'd just been dropped into a romantic comedy, written by fate itself. The next morning, Ivy woke up thinking it had all been a crazy dream. But then her phone buzzed. It was a message from Elizabeth Cooper. The car is waiting for you. See you at the courthouse at 10 a.m. Wear something nice, sweetheart. Ivy sat up in bed, eyes wide. Oh no, this is real. This is very real. She jumped out of bed and ran to the closet. She flung open the doors and stared at her clothes like they were plotting against her. What do you even wear to a fake wedding with a grumpy billionaire? Is there a dress code for that? After 15 minutes of panic, she chose a simple beige dress, the only thing remotely presentable. Outside, a driver in a suit was waiting beside a black limousine. Ivy walked down the steps of her building, clutching her purse like a shield. Good morning, Miss Morris. Mrs. Cooper asked me to pick you up. Of course she did, Ivy muttered, climbing into the car. During the ride, she stared out the window as the city passed by in slow motion. People going to work, drinking coffee, living their normal lives. And her? She was on her way to marry a stranger. My life's turned into a soap opera, she whispered. When she arrived at the courthouse, Derek was already there. He wore a flawless gray suit, but his expression said he'd rather be anywhere else in the universe. Elizabeth stood beside him, smiling like she was planning a Sunday picnic. Ivy, darling, you look lovely. Thanks, Ivy replied, looking around. Where's the rest of it? The rest? Elizabeth blinked, confused. You know, flowers, guests, a cake, something that feels like a wedding? Elizabeth shrugged. Sweetheart, this is just a contract. No need for all the theatrics. Derek crossed his arms. Finally, something we agree on. Ivy took a deep breath. All right, let's just get this over with before I change my mind. The three of them stepped inside the courthouse. The place was small, quiet, and smelled faintly of old paper. The clerk, a middle-aged man with thick glasses, greeted them with a polite smile. Good morning. Documents, please. Elizabeth handed everything over with the efficiency of someone who had planned every detail. The clerk checked the papers, adjusted his glasses, and looked at Ivy and Derek. Any legal reason why this marriage cannot take place? Ivy opened her mouth to speak, but Elizabeth jumped in. None whatsoever. Derek let out a dramatic sigh. The clerk continued. Very well. Mr. Derek Alexander Cooper, do you take Miss Ivy Ann Morris as your lawful wife? Derek looked at his mother. Elizabeth gave a sweet smile, but her eyes clearly said, say yes or lose everything. He swallowed hard. I do. The official turned to Ivy. Miss Ivy Ann Morris, do you take Mr. Derek Alexander Cooper as your lawful husband? Ivy looked at Derek. He looked just as uncomfortable as she felt. For a moment she thought about running, but then she remembered the overdue rent, the pile of bills, the empty fridge. "I do," she said, almost in a whisper. "Perfect. Sign here, here, and here." Ivy took the pen. Her hand trembled slightly as she signed the document. Derek signed right after, with the same excitement as someone signing a parking ticket. The official stamped the papers with a loud thump. "Done. You are now husband and wife. You may kiss if you want." Awkward silence. Ivy and Derek looked at each other. "No, thank you," they said at the same time. Elizabeth let out a little laugh. "Oh, you two are adorable." "Mom, please," Derek muttered. As they left the office, Ivy was holding the marriage certificate like it was some alien document. "So, that's it. I'm officially married." Derek adjusted his tie. "Technically." Elizabeth clasped her hands, beaming. "Now let's go home. I have a surprise for you." Ivy frowned. "What kind of surprise?" "You're going to live together, of course." They both shouted. "Well, you're married. It would be strange to live apart, wouldn't it?" Derek ran a hand down his face. "Mom, that wasn't part of the deal." "Sweetheart, marriage is the deal, and couples live together." Ivy tried to argue. "But Mrs. Cooper, I have my own apartment. That tiny place with the leak in the ceiling? No, dear. You're going to live in the family penthouse." Derek rolled his eyes. This just keeps getting better. In the limousine on the way to the penthouse, the silence was deafening. Ivy looked out the window. Derek was on his phone, ignoring everything. Elizabeth, sitting between them, looked like the happiest person in the world. "You'll see. In a few months, you'll be thanking me." "I doubt it," Derek mumbled. Ivy sighed. "I still can't believe I did this." "Welcome to the club," Derek said, still staring at his phone. When they arrived at the penthouse, Ivy's jaw dropped. The place was enormous, floor-to-ceiling windows, a panoramic view of New York, modern and flawless decor. "This place is bigger than my whole building," Ivy said, amazed. Elizabeth smiled. "I'm glad you like it, dear. Your room is upstairs." "Room? What do you mean, room? Singular?" Ivy's eyes widened. "Yes, dear, you're married." Derek stepped in quickly. "Mom, I'll sleep in the office." "No, you won't. You need to look like a real couple." Ivy raised her hands. "Wait, I didn't agree to this." Elizabeth patted her shoulder. "Dear, it's just for the contract. You can put a pillow in the middle of the bed, like in those old movies." Derek scoffed. "This is ridiculous." "What's ridiculous is wasting an opportunity like this," Elizabeth replied seriously. "Trust me, you'll thank me." And with that, she walked out, leaving Ivy and Derek alone for the first time as husband and wife. They looked at each other. Ivy crossed her arms. "So, now what?" Derek sighed. "Now we try to survive this." Ivy shook her head in disbelief. "I should have left that wheel stuck in the hole." Derek almost smiled. Almost. Couldn't agree more. And just like that, the marriage of convenience became real. Two strangers, one marriage certificate, and a completely uncertain future. But Elizabeth Cooper smiled, satisfied, as if she had just completed the perfect plan. Because deep down, she knew exactly what she was doing. The next day, Ivy went back to her small apartment to pack her things. The place was modest, with a tiny kitchen and a window that faced the alley out back, but it was hers. Or at least it had been. She opened the closet and started tossing clothes into a suitcase, still trying to process everything. "Married. I'm married," she murmured, shaking her head. That's when the door burst open. Ivy Ann Morris. It was Rachel, her best friend since school, wide-eyed and holding her phone. "Rachel, you nearly gave me a heart attack." "I gave you a heart attack. Girl, you got married and didn't tell me. I had to find out through the New York Society's Instagram." Ivy blinked. "Wait, what do you mean Instagram?" Rachel turned the phone toward her. There was a photo of Derek entering the registry office with the caption, "Billionaire heir Derek Cooper gets married in surprise ceremony." Ivy groaned. "Oh no." Rachel sat on the bed, arms crossed. "Well, are you going to tell me, or do I have to learn everything from the internet?" Ivy sighed and told the whole story. The hole in the sidewalk, the missed interview, the coffee with Elizabeth, the crazy proposal, the threat of being disinherited. When she finished, Rachel was speechless. "You're telling me you got married because you helped a lady on the sidewalk? That's unbelievable." "I know, Rachel. But now I'm stuck in a deal with one of the most powerful families in New York." Rachel burst out laughing. Girl, your life turned into a movie, like Cinderella but with no glass slipper and way more drama. It's not funny. Ivy threw a pillow at her. Oh, it is. So what now? Are you living with him? I already am, in the penthouse, with a panoramic view and everything. Rachel jumped up. I need to see this. No, you really don't. Yes, I do. Come on, take me there. Ivy rolled her eyes but smiled. At least she had a friend to make this madness a bit more bearable. Hours later, Ivy came back to the penthouse with her suitcases. Derek was in the living room, working on his laptop, a perfectly placed cup of coffee next to him. He didn't even look up. You're back. I'm back, Ivy said, dropping her bags on the floor. Silence. She walked to the kitchen and opened the fridge. It looked like a museum display. Everything was lined up, labeled, and sorted by category. Who organizes a fridge like this? She mumbled. People who like order, Derek replied, still looking at his screen. People who like order or people who seriously need to relax? He finally looked at her. Do you have a problem with organization? No, I just think life doesn't have to be so stiff. Derek turned back to his laptop. Stiff is different from functional. Ivy grabbed an apple and bit into it loudly, just to annoy him. Functional is boring. Boring is efficient. Efficient is dull. Derek sighed and closed the laptop with a sharp click. Do you always have to get the last word? Ivy smiled. Always. As days went by, living together turned into a comedy of errors. Derek woke up at 6, worked out, had breakfast, and left for work with the punctuality of a Swiss watch. Ivy woke up at 9, tripped over the rug, drank coffee in her pajamas, and took half an hour to pick an outfit. One morning, Derek walked into the kitchen and found Ivy singing and dancing while frying eggs. What are you doing? Making breakfast. Want some? No, I already ate at 6. Of course you did, Ivy rolled her eyes, because you're a robot programmed to be perfect. I'm not a robot. I just have discipline. Discipline is overrated. He grabbed a water bottle and left the kitchen. Ivy yelled after him, One day, you'll learn how to have fun. I doubt it, he shouted back. But things started to change. One night, Derek came home late and found Ivy on the couch, watching a comedy movie and laughing out loud. Do you always laugh like that? He asked, dropping his briefcase. Only when it's funny. Want to watch? No, I have work. You always have work. He hesitated. It's my job. And your job can't wait 15 minutes? Derek looked at the screen. The movie looked silly, but Ivy was laughing so hard, he ended up sitting down. Hurrah! 15 minutes turned into 30, and 30 turned into an hour. When the movie ended, Derek realized he had relaxed for the first time in weeks. It was tolerable, he said. Ivy smiled. Admit it, you liked it. I'm not admitting anything. But he almost smiled. Almost. Meanwhile, in the penthouse office, Elizabeth Cooper watched everything from a distance. She knew exactly what she was doing. One day, she called her personal lawyer. I want to transfer 20% of Cooper Enterprises shares to Ivy Morris Cooper's name. The lawyer blinked, surprised. Mrs. Cooper, are you sure? Absolutely. Do it today, quietly. But that's a considerable amount. Does Miss Ivy know? Elizabeth smiled. No, and she doesn't need to, not yet. The lawyer nodded and left. Elizabeth looked out the window, satisfied. You'll thank me later, she whispered. Ivy and Derek continued their dance of opposites. He complained she left the lights on. She complained he always kept the remote in the exact same spot. He said she was messy. She said he was robotic. But little by little, something was changing. Derek began to notice the house felt more alive with Ivy around, and Ivy began to realize that, behind that armor of seriousness, Derek had a heart. One night, as they ate dinner in silence, Ivy asked, Why are you so serious all the time? Derek stopped chewing. Because life demands seriousness. Life demands balance. You can be responsible and still have fun. He looked at her, thoughtful. Have you always been like this? So optimistic? Not always. But I've learned that complaining doesn't help. Laughing does. Derek stayed quiet. And for the first time, he started to think maybe she was right. Without realizing it, they both began to learn something important from each other. Derek learned that life didn't have to be perfect to be good. And Ivy learned that discipline wasn't a cage, it was freedom. Behind the scenes, Elizabeth Cooper watched everything, pleased. Her plan was going better than she expected, and without anyone knowing, she had already set the stage for something that would change everything. A few days later, Ivy started working at the Cooper Group's hotel. The Hilson Grand Hotel was grand and elegant, with crystal chandeliers, red carpets, and perfectly uniformed staff. Ivy walked through the main lobby, clutching her bag tightly. "Breathe, Ivy. You've got this," she whispered to herself. At the front desk, a middle-aged woman wearing glasses greeted her with a warm smile. "You must be Ivy Morris. Welcome. I'm Grace, the administrative supervisor." Grace had gray hair pulled into a loose bun and a motherly way that immediately made Ivy feel comfortable. "Nice to meet you, Grace." "The pleasure's mine, dear. Come on, I'll show you around." As they walked through the hallways, Grace explained, "This is the event hall. That's the main kitchen. And over there? Well, that's where Brittany usually is." Ivy stopped. "Brittany? Brittany Jones?" Grace made a face. "Oh, you know her?" "Unfortunately." "Then you already know what you're in for," Grace sighed. "She got promoted to manager a few weeks ago, and ever since then, she acts like she owns the place." Ivy swallowed hard. Brittany Jones had worked with her years ago at another hotel. They never got along. Brittany had always been jealous of anything Ivy achieved, and now she was here. As the manager. "Great. Just great," Ivy muttered. It didn't take long for them to cross paths. Ivy was organizing some files in the meeting room when the door burst open. Well, look who's here." It was Brittany. Tall, blonde, with a fake smile and eyes sharp as knives. "Hi, Brittany," Ivy said, trying to stay calm. "I heard you married into the Cooper family. How convenient." Ivy took a deep breath. "That's none of your business." "Oh, but it is, because now you work here, in MI Hotel. Technically, it's part of the Cooper Group." Brittany stepped closer, crossing her arms. "I don't care who you married, Ivy. In here you report to me. Got it?" Ivy held her gaze. "Got it." Brittany smiled smugly and left, slamming the door. Grace came in right after, shaking her head. "Was she always like that?" "Worse," Ivy replied. "Much worse." But Brittany wasn't alone in her mission to make Ivy miserable. The next day, while Ivy was having coffee in the break room, a man walked in. He was tall, dark-haired, and had an arrogant smile. "You're the new one, right, Ivy?" "Yes. And you are?" Mark Evans. I'm in the events department." The name sounded familiar. Then Ivy remembered. "Mark Evans, aren't you Rachel's ex-boyfriend?" His smile faded. "Yeah, and you're her best friend, the one who always took her side, even when she was wrong." Ivy narrowed her eyes. "She wasn't wrong. You were just a terrible boyfriend." Mark stepped closer, irritated. "Watch what you say." "Or what? You'll tell the manager on me?" He gave her a sideways smirk. "Dangerous. I won't need to say a word. I'll just make sure your time here is unpleasant," and walked out. Grace, who had overheard everything from the doorway, walked in, shaking her head. "Oh boy. 2 enemies on your first day. That might be a record." Ivy sighed. "I just wanted to work in peace." "Sweetheart, nobody works in peace around here. But don't worry, you've got some friends too." Grace winked and offered her a cookie. Ivy smiled. At least she had one ally. In the days that followed, Brittany and Mark began plotting. They spread rumors in the hallways, stirred up drama, tried to sabotage Ivy's work. One morning, Ivy was asked to organize an important meeting with investors. She carefully prepared everything: presentations, reports, and coffee. But when she arrived in the meeting room, she saw that someone had switched the documents. "What is this?" one of the investors asked, flipping through the completely wrong report. Ivy turned pale. I don't understand. I had everything ready." Brittany, sitting in the corner of the room, smiled subtly. That's when the door opened. Elizabeth Cooper entered, elegant as always, smoothly rolling her wheelchair into the room. "Sorry for the interruption, gentlemen." Everyone stood up at once. "Mrs. Cooper, what a surprise!" Elizabeth looked around, her eyes settling on Ivy, who was visibly nervous. "I heard there was a problem with the documents." Brittany stood up quickly. "Yes, Mrs. Cooper. Unfortunately, Ivy wasn't able to prepare the reports correctly." Elizabeth turned to Brittany with an icy smile. "Really? That's strange, because I personally asked Ivy to prepare those documents, and she's never let me down." Brittany swallowed hard. Elizabeth continued, "Unless, of course, someone sabotaged her work." The room fell completely silent. Elizabeth took the documents from the investors' hands and examined them. "These aren't the original reports. Someone switched them." Ivy's eyes widened. Brittany turned pale. Then Elizabeth turned to Ivy and said loud enough for everyone to hear, "If there's anyone here who deserves a promotion, it's Ivy Morris." The shock was instant. "Mrs. Cooper," Ivy began, unsure of what to say. Elizabeth raised her hand to stop her. "As of today, Ivy Morris Cooper is promoted to vice president of the Hilson Grand Hotel." Brittany's face lost all color. Mark, who had been watching from the doorway, was left speechless. The investors started to applaud. Ivy, still in shock, tried to process what had just happened. "Mrs. Cooper, I don't know what to say." "Just say thank you and accept it, dear," Elizabeth replied with a warm smile. "Thank you," Ivy said, moved. Brittany stormed out, slamming the door. Mark vanished quickly. After the meeting, Grace ran over and hugged Ivy. "Vice President, oh my goodness, you just rose faster than an elevator." Ivy laughed, still dizzy from it all. "I can't believe it." "Believe it, and now Brittany will have to swallow all that arrogance." Ivy looked around. The other staff members were greeting her with respect. For the first time, she didn't feel like just the girl who married a billionaire. She was someone who had earned respect, and that bothered a lot of people. That night, when Ivy got home, Derek was on the couch reading reports. "I heard you got promoted," he said without looking up. "Did your mother tell you?" "Everyone told me." Ivy sat next to him. "Do you think she did it just because I'm your wife?" Derek finally looked at her. "No, she did it because you deserve it." Ivy blinked, surprised. "Really?" He almost smiled. "My mom is a lot of things, but she's never unfair." Ivy smiled too. And for the first time since it all began, she felt that maybe this crazy marriage had brought something good after all. At least at work, she had finally earned the respect she always deserved. In the weeks that followed, Ivy threw herself into her work. As vice president, she now had responsibilities that once seemed impossible. But to everyone's surprise, and her own, she was doing very well. Grace, her loyal friend, never missed a chance to joke. "Who would have thought, huh? The girl who pulled a wheel out of a hole now runs half the hotel." Ivy laughed as she organized papers in her new office. "I'm not running anything, Grace." "Sweetie, you're the vice president. Even the coffee listens to your orders." "Coffee listens to no one. It only exists to save us." Grace burst out laughing. "I liked you from day one." Ivy smiled. Having Grace around made everything easier. But not everything was smooth. Brittany still gave her dirty looks in the hallway. Mark avoided Ivy like she had the flu, and the whispers continued. She only got that job because of her husband. Must be nice having a powerful mother-in-law. Ivy heard it all, but didn't reply. She knew words wouldn't change minds, only actions would. And her chance to prove herself came sooner than expected. The hotel was organizing a major corporate event. International investors, influential business people, even a few local celebrities were expected. It was the kind of event that couldn't go wrong. Ivy personally oversaw everything. She checked the ballroom, the lighting, the menu, the guest list. Grace showed up with a clipboard. "All set, boss. Even the napkins are folded into swans." Because apparently swans mean sophistication. Ivy laughed. "You think I'm overdoing it?" "Overdoing it? Sweetie, you checked the ballroom temperature 3 times. But that's fine. I'd rather have a perfectionist boss than a careless one." "Thanks, I think." When the night of the event arrived, the ballroom looked flawless. Sparkling chandeliers, decorated tables, soft background music. Guests began arriving, elegant and demanding. Ivy moved through the room, making sure everything was running smoothly. That's when the problem started. One of the waitresses, a young woman named Emily, tripped and dropped a tray of drinks right next to one of the most important guests of the evening, Jonathan Pierce, a billionaire investor known for his explosive temper. The drinks splashed slightly onto his suit. Emily turned pale. "Sir, I'm so sorry. It was an accident." Jonathan stood up, furious. "An accident? This suit costs more than you make in a year. I want this incompetent woman fired immediately." The entire room fell silent. Emily began to cry. Brittany, who had been watching from a distance, quickly stepped in with a fake smile. "Mr. Pierce, I apologize on behalf of the hotel. We'll take care of her dismissal right away." "Wait." Ivy's voice cut through the tension. She walked calmly to the center of the room. "Mr. Pierce, I understand your frustration, but before we make any decisions, I'd like to review what happened." Jonathan looked at her with impatience. "And who are you?" "Ivy Morris Cooper, vice president of the hotel." Brittany clenched her teeth. Ivy continued. May I check the security footage? It'll only take a minute. Jonathan huffed but motioned with his hand. Grace ran to the control room and came back with a tablet. Ivy watched the footage, then showed it to Jonathan. Look here, sir. Emily didn't just trip. Someone pushed the drink cart right as she was passing. Jonathan squinted at the screen. And then it was clear. Mark had pushed the cart on purpose, causing the accident. Jonathan's expression changed. So it wasn't her fault? No, sir. It was sabotage. Ivy turned to Emily, who was still shaking. You won't be fired. On the contrary, thank you for staying calm under pressure. Emily let out a sigh of relief and wiped her tears. Jonathan, impressed, extended his hand to Ivy. You're brave and smart. Well done. Ivy shook his hand. Thank you, Mr. Pierce, and I'm sorry for the inconvenience. I'll make sure your suit is cleaned at no cost. Jonathan smiled, a rare sight. Don't worry, I have others. He returned to his table, satisfied. Brittany, on the other hand, was visibly upset. Grace walked over to Ivy and whispered, You just earned the respect of the toughest man in New York. That deserves a trophy, or at least a piece of cake. Ivy chuckled softly. But the night wasn't over yet. As Ivy chatted with a few guests, the ballroom doors opened. Elizabeth Cooper entered, as elegant as ever, pushed by her driver. The whole room turned to look. Elizabeth smiled and waved at the guests, who greeted her with immediate reverence. She went straight to Ivy. Good evening, dear. Mrs. Cooper, I didn't know you were coming. I always show up at the right time. Elizabeth looked around, taking in the impeccable event. You did a magnificent job. Thank you. I had a great team. Then Elizabeth turned to the guests and raised her voice. May I have everyone's attention for a moment? The room went quiet. Elizabeth continued. I want you all to know, this is Ivy Morris Cooper, my daughter-in-law. And from today on, no one will ever again underestimate her talent, her intelligence, or her worth. Applause erupted. Ivy felt tears threaten to fall, but held them back. Elizabeth stepped closer and took her hand. You deserve every bit of the respect you're getting, dear, and anyone who says otherwise will have to answer to me. Ivy smiled, deeply moved. Thank you, Mrs. Cooper, for everything. Call me Elizabeth. After all, we're family. The applause continued. Grace, standing in the corner, wiped her eyes with a napkin. Oh my goodness, I'm crying. This is ridiculous, she mumbled, sniffling. Jonathan Pierce stood and raised his glass. A toast to Ivy Cooper, the woman who proved that competence doesn't come with a last name. Everyone raised their glasses. Ivy looked around the room, seeing the same faces that once doubted her, now clapping in her honor. It wasn't just about the Cooper name anymore. It was about the respect she'd earned, with hard work, intelligence, and courage. That night, Ivy realized something important. She was no longer just the girl who once helped an older woman on the sidewalk. She was a woman who had discovered her own worth, and even more than that, she had earned the true admiration of her mother-in-law. The woman who, with just a single cup of coffee, had changed her life forever. When the event ended, Ivy went home exhausted, but happy. Derek was waiting in the living room. I heard you were the star of the evening. Ivy smiled, kicking off her shoes. Your mother exaggerated as usual. She doesn't exaggerate, she just announces the truth a little louder than most. Ivy laughed. That's one way to put it. Derek looked at her, and for the first time there was something different in his eyes. Respect, admiration, and maybe something more. You're doing a great job, Ivy. Really. Thank you. They stayed quiet for a moment, and something in the air shifted, but neither of them said a word. Not yet. The next morning, Ivy was sipping her coffee when Derek walked into the kitchen, already in his suit. I have an important meeting today, he said, picking up a cup. Oh, nice. Good luck. Actually, I wanted to know if you'd like to come with me. Ivy stopped chewing. Come with you? To a meeting? Yes, it's about the company's strategies. I thought it might be interesting for you to attend. As vice president of the hotel, it makes sense for you to know more about the group. Ivy hesitated. I don't know, Derek. Corporate meetings aren't really my thing. You organized an event with international investors. That's more corporate than any meeting. She smiled. Good point. So come, I promise it won't be boring. Corporate meetings are always boring, Derek almost smiled. Then you'll make it less boring. Ivy laughed. All right, I'll come. Hours later, Ivy and Derek walked into the Cooper Enterprises building. The place was impressive, all glass and steel with employees rushing by. Ivy looked around, amazed. Wow, this is serious. It's the operations center. Everything happens here. They took the elevator to the 20th floor, where the meeting would take place. Grace, who had been invited to assist with logistics, was already there. Ivy, what a lovely surprise. Grace, you're here too? Yes, dear. Where there's trouble, I'm there. It's basically my life motto. Ivy laughed. Grace leaned in and whispered, Careful, Brittany's here too. And from the look on her face, she's up to something. Ivy glanced around and saw Brittany talking to Mark in the corner of the room. The two of them were exchanging quick glances in her direction. Of course they are, Ivy muttered. The meeting began. The room was full of executives, managers, and investors, all dressed sharply, all with serious expressions. Derek sat at the head of the table, and, though Ivy didn't realize how significant that was, she was focused on the documents that had been handed out. The meeting's topic was international expansion. New hotels, new markets, new partnerships. One of the executives began presenting the financial data. Ivy followed along carefully, taking notes. Then something caught her attention. One of the numbers didn't add up. She frowned, double-checking it. Excuse me, Ivy said, raising her hand. The executive paused. Yes? Sorry to interrupt, but I think there's a mistake in the spreadsheet. Brittany, sitting across the table, gave a subtle smile. Ivy, that spreadsheet has been reviewed 3 times. There's no mistake. Ivy looked at the numbers again. But the revenue projection for the 3rd quarter is off. The calculation doesn't reflect the updated exchange rate. The executive blinked, confused. Exchange rate? Yes. If we're expanding into Europe, we have to account for the euro's fluctuation. And this is using the rate from 6 months ago. Silence. The executive quickly flipped through the papers. She's right. Brittany turned pale. Derek watched Ivy with an unreadable expression. Ivy continued. And there's more. The market analysis for France is incomplete. It's missing the impact of local tourism regulations. That could directly affect the project's feasibility. One of the investors leaned forward. Do you speak French? Ivy nodded. Yes, I studied it in college. And Spanish? Because we're also considering Spain. I speak Spanish too. The investor smiled, clearly impressed. Brittany, now desperate, tried to cut in. Ivy, with all due respect, these analyses were done by experts. Ivy turned to her calmly. Then the experts made mistakes because the numbers don't match. Grace, in the corner of the room, was trying not to laugh. Mark, realizing the plan was falling apart, tried to change the subject. Maybe we should move on and review this later. Derek finally spoke. No. We'll review it now. His voice had authority. The room fell completely silent. Ivy looked at him, surprised by his tone. Derek continued. Ivy, can you present your correction? Of course. She stood up, took a marker, and walked to the whiteboard. With clarity and precision, she read the calculations, explained the inconsistencies, and proposed adjustments. Then, to everyone's surprise, she gave a summary in 3 languages, English, French, and Spanish. The international investors were stunned. When she finished, the room was completely quiet, and then the applause started. At first slowly, then louder and louder. Ivy, feeling shy, returned to her seat. Derek was watching her with something she couldn't quite read. Pride? Admiration? Something else? The French investor stood up. Mademoiselle Cooper, you just saved this project from a financial disaster. Congratulations. Ivy smiled, still trying to take it all in. Thank you. I just did what needed to be done. Brittany looked furious. Mark was avoiding everyone's gaze. Grace, on the other hand, looked absolutely delighted. After the meeting, the investors surrounded Ivy, asking questions and praising her sharp thinking. Derek waited until everyone had left before walking over to her. You are amazing. Thanks. But why was everyone listening to you like you were? Wait. Ivy looked around. The room was empty except for the 2 of them. Derek? What exactly is your position at the company? He hesitated. I'm the president of Cooper Enterprises. Ivy's eyes widened. What? I thought you knew. How would I know? You never told me. I figured it was obvious. Obvious, Derek? You're the president of one of the biggest companies in New York and thought that was obvious? He shrugged. Didn't my mother mention it? No. Ivy ran her hands over her face in disbelief. So that meeting, you were testing me? Derek hesitated again. Not exactly testing, but yes, I wanted to see how you'd handle it. Ivy didn't know whether to laugh or get upset. And did I pass? Derek smiled. A real rare smile. You didn't pass, you nailed it. Ivy felt her face flush. So this whole thing was a setup? No. Brittany and Mark really did mess with the documents. They switched the numbers on purpose. Seriously? Seriously? And you caught it, on your own? Ivy shook her head. This family is full of surprises. Derek took a step closer. Ivy, you're brilliant. And not just because you fixed the numbers. It's because you have something most people here don't have, courage. Ivy looked at him surprised. Are you complimenting me? Just stating a fact. She smiled. That's as close to a compliment as I'll get from you, isn't it? Derek nearly laughed. Probably. They stood there for a moment just looking at each other. There was something in the air, something different. But before either of them could say anything, Grace walked into the room. Sorry to interrupt this movie moment, but the investors are waiting for you two at lunch. Ivy blinked, coming back to reality. Right, let's go. As they walked out, Grace whispered to Ivy, he was looking at you with that look. What look? The look of someone falling in love and not ready to admit it. Ivy rolled her eyes but smiled. You're imagining things, Grace. Sweetheart, I'm seeing what's obvious. You two are the ones who are blind. Ivy shook her head, but deep down part of her agreed. Walking ahead, Derek glanced back and met Ivy's eyes, and in that moment he realized she wasn't just his wife on paper. She was a brilliant, courageous, and genuine woman, and he was starting to fall for her. He just didn't know how to deal with it yet. After lunch with the investors, Derek went back to the office while Ivy returned to the hotel. The afternoon went by quickly, but Ivy couldn't stop thinking about the meeting. Derek was the president. And without knowing, she had corrected errors right in front of the company's top executives. Oh my gosh, I could have made a complete fool of myself, she muttered sitting in her room. Grace walked in with a cup of coffee. Are you talking to yourself again? I'm still processing the fact that my fake husband is the president of a billion-dollar company, and I didn't know it. Grace laughed. Sweetheart, you're married to the man. How did you not know? Because he never told me. I thought he was just some regular executive. A regular executive who lives in a penthouse and has a personal driver? Ivy paused. Okay, maybe I should have suspected something. Grace patted her on the shoulder. At least now you know. And you crushed that meeting, so it's all good. Ivy smiled. Thanks, Grace. Just as Ivy was about to leave the hotel, her phone rang. It was Derek. Hi. Hi, are you free tonight? Ivy blinked, surprised. Free? Why? I'd like to take you to dinner, to celebrate. Celebrate what? Your success in the meeting. Ivy hesitated. They had never gone out together. Not really. Derek, we don't have to. I know we don't have to, but I want to. There was something different in his voice. Softer. Ivy smiled without realizing it. Okay. What time? 8 o'clock. I'll pick you up at home. You already live at home with me. Then I'll pick you up in the living room. Ivy laughed. Deal. At 8 o'clock, Ivy was dressed in a simple light green dress and low sandals. Nothing too fancy. After all, it was just dinner. Or at least that's what she kept telling herself. Derek walked into the living room also dressed up, but without a tie. Just a blue dress shirt and dark slacks. He stopped when he saw her. You look beautiful. Ivy felt her cheeks warm. Thanks. You look presentable. He smiled slightly. Presentable? That's a compliment coming from me. Derek shook his head, amused. Shall we? They went to a nice restaurant, elegant but not flashy, just warm and welcoming. The lighting was soft, there was music playing in the background, and only a few tables were taken. Ivy looked around, impressed. How did you find this place? My mom used to bring me here when I was a kid. Really? Elizabeth Cooper came to a regular restaurant? Derek laughed. She wasn't always famous, Ivy. There was a time when we were just normal. Ivy smiled. Hard to picture. They sat down and ordered dinner. The conversation started light. They talked about the hotel, the meeting, the investors. But then Derek grew serious. Ivy, I need to tell you something. She stopped eating. What is it? About today. About the meeting. You already told me you're the president. Got more surprises? Are you also the owner of the city? Derek chuckled. No. But I didn't tell you everything. Ivy frowned. Go on. Derek took a deep breath. That hotel, the Hilson Grand Hotel, that expansion project, it all belongs to my family, to Cooper Enterprises. Ivy blinked. Wait, the hotel where I work, it's yours? Technically, it's the company's. But yes. Ivy leaned back in her chair, trying to process. So, you're my boss? Technically, yes. And you knew this the whole time? Yes. Ivy shook her head in disbelief. Derek, why didn't you tell me sooner? Because I wanted to see who you really were. No pressure, no influence. Ivy crossed her arms. So it was a test? At first, yes. But later it wasn't. When did it stop being a test? Derek looked her straight in the eyes. When I realized you didn't need my last name to shine. Ivy stayed silent. There was something about his honesty that disarmed her. You know what's funny? She said at last. What? Even being the president of a billion-dollar company, the boss of hundreds of people, and practically owning New York, you still forget where you leave your house keys. Derek blinked, surprised, then laughed. A real, genuine laugh. That's true, every morning. Yesterday, you searched for 10 minutes. They were in your jacket pocket. I know. And you even asked me if I'd seen them. Derek laughed harder. You're right, I'm a disaster with keys. Ivy smiled. At least you're honest. The tension faded. The conversation flowed again. But then Derek grew serious once more. Ivy, there's something else I need to tell you. Oh my goodness, Derek, how many secrets do you have? He smiled faintly, but he was nervous. It's not a secret, it's a confession. Ivy stopped joking. Something in his voice had changed. What is it? Derek looked down at his hands, then back at her. When my mom forced me to marry you, I thought it was the worst idea ever. Ivy tried not to show that it stung a little. I thought so too. But I was wrong. She blinked. What do you mean? Derek took a deep breath. I didn't expect it, but I fell in love with you. The world seemed to pause. Ivy was completely speechless. You. What? I fell in love with you, Ivy. Truly. She opened her mouth, but no sound came out. Derek went on. At first I was angry, frustrated. I thought you were just another person trying to take advantage of my family. Derek. But then I saw you work. I saw how you treat people, how you stand up for those who can't stand up for themselves, how you laugh at the silliest things and turn hard moments into something light. Ivy felt her eyes start to water. And I realized you're not just smart or brave. You're real, and that's rare. He reached for her hand across the table. I fell for the woman who pulled a wheel out of a pothole, the woman who missed an interview to help someone, the woman who faces jealous coworkers with a smile. Ivy let out a shaky laugh. Derek, you don't have to say anything now. I just wanted you to know. But Ivy shook her head. No, I need to say something. She took a breath. When your mom made me marry you, I thought I was making the worst decision of my life. Derek gave her a soft smile. Fair enough. But you surprised me, even though you're serious, methodical, and completely obsessed with organization. Hey, you have a good heart, and I started to see that little by little. She squeezed his hand. I fell in love with you too, Derek. His eyes widened. Really? Really? Even though you're hopeless with keys. Derek laughed, moved, and for the first time since they met, they looked at each other not as strangers in a contract, but as two people who had found something unexpected. Love. Derek stood, walked around the table, and held out his hand. Care to dance? Ivy looked around. Here? In the middle of the restaurant? Why not? She laughed and took his hand. They danced slowly, swaying to the soft music. Ivy rested her head on his shoulder. Who would have thought, huh? All because of a hole in the sidewalk. Derek smiled. Best hole of my life. Ivy let out a quiet laugh. And in that moment, something changed. The marriage that had started out of duty, out of convenience, out of pressure, became something real. That night marked the beginning of true love, born out of chaos but solid as fate. When they got home, Derek stopped at the bedroom door. Good night, Ivy. Good night, Derek. They looked at each other for a long moment, and then for the first time they kissed. A soft, sincere kiss full of promise. When they pulled apart, Ivy smiled. That was unexpected? Perfect. Derek smiled too. And that night, they both went to sleep knowing their lives had changed forever. The contract was still in effect, but now what bound them wasn't paper. It was love. Ivy and Derek were no longer just a couple on paper. They were husband and wife, for real. The penthouse, once quiet and orderly, now had life. Laughter, conversations, even small debates over which movie to watch. Elizabeth watched it all from a distance, pleased. Her plan had worked better than she expected. One morning, Ivy was in the kitchen making coffee when her phone rang. It was her mother. "Mom, what a surprise." "Hi, sweetheart. How are you?" "I'm great. And you two?" "We're good. Actually, your father and I were thinking of paying you a visit." Ivy nearly dropped her cup. "A visit? Here in New York?" "Yes, it's been so long since we've seen you, and we want to meet your husband properly." Ivy smiled, touched. "Of course, Mom. When are you coming?" "How about next week?" "Perfect." When Ivy hung up, Derek walked into the kitchen already dressed for work. "Who was that?" "My mom. My parents are coming to visit next week." Derek stopped mid-tie. "Your parents?" "Yes, they want to get to know you better. Are you nervous?" "Me? Nervous? Of course not." Ivy laughed. "You're nervous. I'm not." "You are. You just tied your tie 3 times." Derek looked down and realized she was right. "All right, maybe I'm a little nervous." Ivy stepped closer and adjusted his tie. "Relax. They're going to love you." "How can you be so sure?" "Because I love you, and they trust my judgment." Derek smiled and kissed her forehead. "You always know what to say." The following week, Ivy was at the train station, waiting anxiously. When her parents appeared, she ran to hug them. "Mom, Dad." Linda Morris, a warm woman with gray hair, hugged her daughter tightly. "My girl, you look so beautiful." "Thanks, Mom." Thomas Morris, a kind-faced man with calloused hands, hugged her too. "We've missed you, sweetheart." "I missed you too, so much." Derek stood a few steps behind, watching. Ivy called to him. "Come on, Derek. I want you to meet my husband." Derek stepped forward and held out his hand. "Nice to meet you, Mr. Morris, Mrs. Morris." Thomas shook his hand firmly with a measuring look. "Nice to meet you, son. So, you're the man who married my daughter." "I am, sir, and I promise to take good care of her." Linda smiled, squeezing Derek's arm. "I'm sure you do, dear. Ivy spoke very highly of you on the phone." Ivy blushed. "Mom." "What? It's true." Derek smiled, clearly pleased. On the way to the penthouse, Linda kept talking. "New York is so big. And loud. But beautiful. Very beautiful." Thomas stared out the window, amazed. When they arrived at the penthouse, both were stunned. "My goodness." Linda murmured. "Ivy, you live here?" Thomas asked, in disbelief. "I do, Dad. It's Derek's place. I mean our place." Linda walked over to the window and looked out at the New York skyline. "This place is bigger than our whole town." Ivy laughed. "I thought the same thing at first." Thomas stepped closer to Derek. "You must work hard to afford all this, son." "I do, sir. But Ivy works hard too. She's the vice president of the hotel." Thomas blinked, surprised. "Vice president?" Ivy nodded proudly. "Yes. I managed to stand out." Linda hugged her daughter again. "I always knew you'd go far, sweetheart." That night, Ivy prepared a homemade dinner. Nothing fancy, just something simple that reminded her of home. While they ate, Thomas finally brought up the real reason for the visit. "Ivy, there's something we wanted to talk to you about." She paused, setting her fork down. "Of course, Dad. What is it?" Thomas and Linda exchanged a look. "Well, you know our little candy business, right?" "Of course, the home bakery." "Yes, and, well, things have been going really well lately, better than we expected." Linda continued. "We've been getting lots of orders, even from nearby towns, and we've been thinking about expanding." Ivy smiled, moved. "That's wonderful." Thomas raised his hand. "But we're not here to ask for money, Ivy. Let's make that clear. We're here to share our dream, and we wanted your opinion." Ivy felt her eyes fill with tears. "Dad, Mom, I'm so proud of you both." Derek, who had stayed quiet until then, leaned forward. "Mr. Morris, may I ask you something?" "Of course, son." "Have you ever thought about opening a second location here in New York?" Thomas blinked. "New York? No, that would be way too expensive." "What if I invested in the business?" Silence. Linda and Thomas froze. Ivy looked at Derek, surprised. "Derek," he went on, "you have a great product. You're dedicated. You're passionate. The only thing stopping you is the startup cost, and I can help with that." Thomas shook his head. "Son, that's very generous, but it's not generosity, sir. It's an investment. I believe in your business, and more than that, I believe in Ivy's family." Linda covered her mouth, moved to tears. Ivy held Derek's hand under the table. Thomas took a deep breath. "Are you serious, son?" "Completely. I'll help you open a small location in Manhattan, a cozy spot, in a good area. And you'll keep full control of the business." Ivy couldn't hold back her tears. Derek, thank you. He squeezed her hand. It's the least I can do for the family of the woman I love. Linda started crying too. Thomas stood up and extended his hand to Derek. Son, I don't know what to say. Derek shook his hand. Just say you accept. Thomas smiled, emotional. I accept, and thank you. That night, after Ivy's parents had gone to bed, she and Derek sat out on the porch. You didn't have to do that, Ivy said. I know, but I wanted to. Why? Derek pulled her close. Because when I heard your dad talk about his dream, I saw the same determination I see in you. And I thought, these are the people who raised the amazing woman I love. Ivy rested her head on his chest. You won my heart all over again today. Just today, she laughed. Every day, actually. Derek kissed the top of her head. Then we're even. In the days that followed, Derek helped Thomas find a commercial space in Manhattan, a small, charming spot, perfect for a bakery. Linda couldn't stop making plans. Decor, menu, packaging. Ivy had never seen her parents so happy. On the day they signed the lease, Thomas pulled Derek aside. Son, I need to tell you something. Of course, sir. When Ivy called to say she'd gotten married, I was worried. I thought she rushed into it, that she didn't really know you. Derek listened quietly. But now, seeing how you treat her, how you care about our family, I know I was wrong. Thomas placed his hand on Derek's shoulder. You're not just her husband, you're the right man for her. Derek felt a lump in his throat. Thank you, Mr. Morris. That means a lot. Take care of my girl, all right? Always. Linda showed up with Ivy, both laughing about something. What are you two talking about? Ivy asked. Men's stuff, Thomas replied with a wink. Ivy rolled her eyes but smiled. That night before bed, Linda said to Ivy, Sweetheart, I'm so happy for you. Thank you, Mom. And Derek. He's special. You're lucky. Ivy smiled. I know, but he's lucky to have me too. Linda laughed. That's true. You've always been strong-willed. I learned from the best. Linda hugged her daughter. You're still the same simple girl we raised, just with a bigger life now. Ivy held her mother tightly. I'll always be the same, Mom. I promise. When Ivy's parents returned to the countryside, they left New York with full hearts. Their dream was coming true, and Ivy had found not just a husband, but a life partner. Someone who loved her for who she was, and who loved her family too. That night, as Ivy and Derek lay in bed, she said, Thank you for everything you did for my family. You don't have to thank me. Yes, I do. Because you didn't do it out of obligation. You did it because you wanted to. Derek turned to her. Ivy, your family is my family now, and I take care of my family. She smiled. I love you. I love you too. And for the first time since it all began, Ivy realized something important. That marriage, which started by chance from a random sidewalk moment, had become the best decision of her life. 2 months later, Ivy woke up with a strange feeling. She rushed to the bathroom and, for the 3rd morning in a row, felt sick. Derek appeared in the doorway, worried. Again? Ivy waved her hand, trying to catch her breath. It must be something I ate. You said that yesterday, and the day before. Derek crossed his arms. Ivy, I think you should see a doctor. I'm fine, it's just a passing discomfort. But Derek wasn't convinced. That afternoon, after yet another episode of nausea, Ivy finally agreed to take a test. Rachel, who was visiting, held her hand. Do you think it could be? Ivy looked at the pregnancy test in her hand. I don't know. Maybe. There's only one way to find out. Ivy went into the bathroom, took the test, and waited the longest 3 minutes of her life. When she looked at the result, her heart stopped. 2 lines. Positive. Oh my God. Rachel knocked on the door. Well? Ivy opened the door slowly, holding the test. Rachel looked and screamed, You're pregnant! Ivy was still processing. I'm going to be a mom. And Derek's going to be a dad. Oh my gosh, Ivy, this is amazing. Ivy smiled, emotional. Yeah, it is amazing. When Derek came home that evening, Ivy was nervous. She had prepared a special dinner and placed a small box in the center of the table. Derek walked in, dropped his briefcase, and looked around. What's all this? Dinner. Something special. Why, did I forget an important date? Ivy laughed. No, but today is still important. Derek sat down, curious. You're scaring me. Ivy pushed the box toward him. Open it. Derek opened it and found a tiny pair of baby shoes inside. He blinked, confused. These are baby shoes? Yes, baby shoes. I know they're baby shoes, but what? And then it hit him. Derek's eyes widened. Ivy, are you? She nodded, tears in her eyes. I'm pregnant. Derek froze for a second, then jumped up, knocking over the chair. I'm going to be a dad. Ivy laughed, emotional. Derek ran over and picked her up, spinning her around. Derek, careful. Sorry, he said, setting her down with exaggerated care. Oh my gosh, Ivy, we're gonna have a baby. Yes, we are. He held her face in both hands. You just gave me the best news of my life. I thought that was when I agreed to marry you. That's tied for first. Ivy laughed and kissed him. But while happiness filled the penthouse, something was about to threaten the couple's peace. The next morning, Derek was in a business meeting at the office when a woman walked in. Tall, elegant, dressed in a flawless red suit, it was Carla Monroe, a businesswoman known for her ruthless ambition. Derek Cooper, she said, extending her hand. We finally meet. Derek shook her hand, polite but distant. Miss Monroe, a pleasure. Call me Carla, and the pleasure's all mine. The meeting went on, but Carla never took her eyes off Derek. She asked questions, laughed at his answers, and was clearly trying to impress him. After the meeting, she approached him in the hallway. Derek, I loved Cooper Enterprises' proposal. I think our companies could gain a lot together. I'm glad you liked it. Carla stepped closer. You know, I heard you're single. Derek frowned. No, I'm married. Carla blinked, surprised. Married? That's not mentioned anywhere in the media, because my personal life is private. I see, but what if I told you we could build an empire together? Combine our fortunes, our influence. Derek took a step back. Miss Monroe, I'm married, and happy. I'm not interested in anything that isn't professional. Carla smiled, but her eyes were cold. I understand. Well, the offer stands, in case you change your mind. Derek just nodded and walked away. When he got home, Ivy was on the couch reading a book about pregnancy. How was your day? She asked. Interesting. I met a businesswoman who clearly doesn't understand the word no. Ivy raised an eyebrow. What kind of businesswoman? Carla Monroe. She proposed a partnership and hinted at something more. Ivy closed the book. Something more? Yes, but I made it clear that I'm married and happy. Ivy smiled. Good to know. Derek sat beside her and placed his hand on her belly. How's our baby doing? Probably the size of a raisin. A very important raisin, Ivy laughed. But the peace didn't last long. In the days that followed, Carla started showing up at events, meetings, even the hotel. She always found an excuse to talk to Derek. What a coincidence seeing you here. We need to go over that proposal. Do you have a minute? Derek remained polite but firm. Until one day, Carla went too far. During a gala event, she approached Derek with 2 glasses of champagne. A drink? No, thanks. I'm driving, Carla smiled. Derek, why do you keep avoiding me? We could be amazing together. Miss Monroe, I've already made it clear. You made it clear that you're married. But marriages end, especially ones of convenience. Derek tensed. How do you know about this? I have my sources, and I know your marriage started as an agreement, but I'm offering something real. Power, influence, an empire. Derek stepped forward, serious. My marriage may have started as an arrangement, but it turned into something real, and I love my wife. So, with all due respect, I'm not interested in your offer. Carla was about to respond when a familiar voice cut through the air. Carla Monroe. It was Elizabeth Cooper, arriving in her wheelchair with a graceful but dangerous smile. Mrs. Cooper, Carla said, forcing a smile. What a surprise. The surprise is that you're still here after being told no. The room went quiet. Elizabeth continued. My daughter-in-law is the only woman worthy of this name, and anyone who messes with her will find out what a mother-in-law's power really looks like. Carla turned pale. I didn't mean to offend. You did. And now, you're going to leave, politely. Carla looked around. Everyone was watching. With no choice, she left. Derek walked up to Elizabeth. Thank you, Mom. Elizabeth smiled. I protect my family, always. When Derek told Ivy everything, she couldn't stop laughing. Your mom is amazing. She's terrifying. Terrifyingly amazing. Derek hugged Ivy. Carla figured out she's up against a united family and a woman who can't be taken down. Ivy rested her head on his chest. That's because she hasn't seen an angry pregnant woman yet. Derek laughed. Heaven help me. Ivy smiled. Good to know you've got my back. Always. In the following days, Carla made one last attempt. She sent flowers, messages, invitations, but Derek ignored it all. Eventually, she gave up and returned to her city. Grace, who had been watching everything from the hotel, said to Ivy, "That woman really thought she could steal your husband?" Ivy shrugged. "She might have tried, but Derek's mine. And with a baby on the way, she didn't stand a chance." Ivy smiled, placing a hand on her belly. "Not even close." Grace laughed. "You're glowing, you know that?" "Unhappy. And you deserve it, after everything you've been through." Ivy looked out the hotel window, watching the city outside. Months ago, she was just an unemployed girl who helped a lady stuck in a pothole. Now she was a vice president, a wife, and soon a mother. Life had completely changed, all because she chose to help. That night, as Derek and Ivy had dinner, he said, "You know what I realized?" "What?" "That hole in the sidewalk changed everything." Ivy smiled. "It's true. If I hadn't stopped, we wouldn't have met, we wouldn't be here, and we wouldn't be expecting our baby." Ivy held his hand. "So I thank that hole every single day." Derek laughed. "Me too." And in that moment they both knew, no matter who tried to get in the way, they were a family, and nothing could change that. The next morning, Ivy was at the hotel reviewing some documents when Grace came running in. "Did you see the news?" Ivy looked up. "What news?" Grace turned her phone toward her. On the screen, a headline read, "Henry Cooper returns to New York after 5 years." Ivy frowned. "Derek's father?" "Exactly, and from what I'm reading, he's not happy about his son's marriage." Ivy felt a chill. "What do you mean?" Grace read aloud. "Close sources say Henry Cooper disapproves of the marriage and intends to reverse the situation." Ivy dropped her pen. "Reverse it? How?" "I don't know, honey, but if I were you, I'd keep an eye out." Ivy grabbed her phone and called Derek. He answered on the third ring. "Hey, love." "Derek, did you see the news about your father?" Silence. "I did." "Why didn't you tell me?" "Because I didn't want to worry you, especially now that you're pregnant." Ivy sighed. "Derek, we're a couple. You can't protect me from everything." "I know, I'm sorry, but my father, he's complicated." "Complicated how?" "Ambitious. Cold. He only cares about business and power. When my mother proposed our marriage, he was against it, but she owns more shares than he does, so he couldn't stop it. And now? Now he's back, and he'll probably try to stir up trouble." Ivy tightened her grip on the phone. "We'll face it together." Derek smiled on the other end. Together. 2 days later, Henry Cooper called for an emergency meeting at Cooper Enterprises. All the executives, shareholders, and even the press were invited. Ivy was nervous. "Why the press?" Derek adjusted his tie tense. "Because my father loves putting on a show." Elizabeth, standing calmly beside them, said, "Don't worry, dear. Your father-in-law is all theatrics, but I know the script." Ivy gave a small smile, but her nerves were still there. The event hall was packed. Cameras, reporters, and executives in sharp suits. Henry Cooper stood on stage imposing. He was tall, with gray hair and a piercing gaze. When he saw Derek, Ivy, and Elizabeth walk in, he smiled, but it was a cold smile. "My son." "Elizabeth." "And?" "Ivy, is that right?" Ivy extended her hand. "Nice to meet you, Mr. Cooper." Henry shook her hand, but there was disdain in his eyes. "The pleasure is mine." Derek tensed up. The meeting began. Henry spoke about the company, about expansion, about the future. But then he got to the main topic. "As you all know, my son Derek is the president of Cooper Enterprises. And as such, his personal decisions directly affect the company." The room went quiet. Henry continued. "Recently, Derek got married. To a woman. Ordinary. No connections, no influence." Ivy felt her face heat up. Derek clenched his fists. Henry went on. "But I, as both a shareholder and a father, believe it would be more beneficial for the company to form an alliance with someone from our circle. Like, for example, Carla Monroe." Murmurs broke out across the room. Ivy looked at Derek, stunned. "Is he serious?" Derek stood up. "Dad, this is ridiculous." Henry smiled. "What's ridiculous is choosing emotions over business." Derek walked up to the stage and took the microphone. "With all due respect, Dad, the only woman I love and the one I'm married to is Ivy Morris Cooper." The room fell completely silent. Derek continued. "I'm not getting a divorce. I'm not marrying Carla Monroe. And if that bothers you, you'll just have to accept it." Ivy felt her eyes fill with tears. Henry was visibly upset. "Derek, you're making a mistake." "No, the only mistake would be walking away from the woman I love." Applause began to rise in the room. But before Henry could respond, Elizabeth stood up. She made her way to the stage, pushing her wheelchair with purpose. "Henry, dear." Henry turned to her. "Elizabeth, stay out of this." She smiled. "Since you love alliances so much, here's mine." Elizabeth opened her purse and took out an envelope. "Our divorce." The audience gasped. Henry's eyes widened. "What?" Elizabeth opened the envelope and pulled out the papers. "I signed them this morning. Just needs your signature. But don't worry, everything's already with the lawyers." Henry turned pale. "Elizabeth, you can't." "I can, and I already did." Then she turned to the crowd. "And one more thing." The room fell into complete silence. Elizabeth continued. "As of today, all my shares in Cooper Group are transferred to Ivy Morris Cooper." The announcement hit like a bomb. Ivy was frozen. "What?" Derek looked at his mother, stunned. "Mom?" Elizabeth smiled at Ivy. "You deserve it, dear, for everything you've done, for who you are." Ivy couldn't hold back the tears. The audience erupted in applause. Henry was furious, but there was nothing he could do. He left the stage, slamming the door behind him. Ivy walked up and hugged Elizabeth. "Thank you," she whispered. "You're my daughter now, and I take care of my family." Derek joined them, wrapping his arms around both. And in that moment, the entire room gave them a standing ovation. After the event, Ivy was still in shock. I own part of the company?" Elizabeth smiled. "Yes, dear. 20% of the shares are in there, but why?" "Because you showed you're not here for money. You're here for love, and that's rare." Ivy hugged Elizabeth again. "You changed my life. You changed mine too, dear." Derek watched them both, proud. When they got home, Ivy was still trying to take it all in. "I'm a shareholder. Me, the girl who missed an interview to help an old lady." Derek laughed. "And now you own part of Cooper Enterprises." Ivy shook her head in disbelief. "My life is a romantic comedy. A good one." She smiled. "The best." Derek pulled her close. "You deserve all of this, Ivy, and more. All I wanted was a job, and I ended up with a family. And a baby." Ivy laughed. "And a baby." They stayed quiet for a moment, just enjoying the peace. But then Ivy had an idea. "You know what we need to do? What? Celebrate, but our way." "And what's our way?" Ivy smiled. "Pizza and a bad movie." Derek laughed. "Perfect." That night, while eating pizza and watching a silly movie, Ivy realized something. She had everything she ever wanted. Love, family, respect, and a future. All because one day, she chose to stop and help someone. And that choice changed her life forever. In the days that followed, news of Elizabeth's divorce and the share transfer took over the headlines. Henry Cooper tried to fight it, but legally, there was nothing he could do. Elizabeth had been smart. Everything was documented, signed, and filed. At the hotel, Grace couldn't stop laughing. "Your mother-in-law is a legend. Divorcing him in public? That's pure cinema." Ivy smiled. "She's amazing. And you too, dear, owner of 20% of Cooper Enterprises. Who would have thought?" Ivy shook her head. "I still can't believe it." "Believe it, and enjoy it. You deserve it." Ivy looked out the hotel window, gazing at the city beyond. She had started out as an unemployed girl. Now she was a vice president, a shareholder, a wife, and a soon-to-be mother. Her life had completely turned around, and all because of a hole in the sidewalk. That night, Derek and Ivy had dinner with Elizabeth. "Mom, thank you for everything you did today," Derek said. Elizabeth smiled. "I only did what was right. Your father was always too ambitious. It was time to set some limits." Ivy held her hand. "You're the best mother-in-law in the world." Elizabeth laughed. "And you're the best daughter-in-law, and soon the best mom." Ivy gently touched her belly. "I hope so." "You will be, I'm sure of it." Derek looked at the two most important women in his life. His mother, his wife, and he felt deeply grateful. "Thank you both for coming into my life." Elizabeth blinked. "Are you getting emotional, dear?" "Maybe," Ivy laughed. "That's my fault. I'm making him sentimental." "And I don't mind one bit." Elizabeth raised her glass. A toast to family, to courage, and to sidewalk holes that change lives. Ivy and Derek laughed and toasted. And that night they all knew. No matter what the future held, they were in it together. And nothing and no one could change that. The next morning, Ivy woke up feeling different. She was no longer just the vice president of the hotel. She was a shareholder of Cooper Enterprises. Derek was beside her, still asleep. She watched him for a moment and smiled. Who would have thought that serious, methodical man would become the love of her life? She got up carefully and went to the window. New York City sparkled below, and for the first time, Ivy felt like she had control over her own destiny. When Derek woke up, he found Ivy in the kitchen, sipping tea. "You're up early." "I couldn't sleep." "Thinking about the baby?" Ivy smiled. "Thinking about everything. The baby, the company, Brittany and Mark." Derek frowned. "What about them?" "They're still working at the hotel, and after everything they did." Derek sat beside her. "You want to fire them?" "I want to settle this, once and for all." Derek held her hand. "Then do it. You have the power now." Ivy took a deep breath. "I'll call a meeting." That afternoon, Ivy scheduled a meeting at the hotel. Just her, Brittany, and Mark. Grace, who had heard about it, showed up with a mischievous grin. "Finally going to put those two in their place?" Ivy shook her head. "I'm not putting them in their place. I'm putting an end to this. Either way, it's going to be interesting." Ivy gave a slight smile. When Brittany and Mark entered the conference room, they were visibly nervous. Brittany tried to keep her usual poise, but her eyes betrayed her fear. Mark looked pale. Ivy sat at the head of the table, calm and composed. "Have a seat." They obeyed. Brittany was the first to speak. "Ivy, if this is about—" "Let me speak first." Brittany closed her mouth. Ivy continued. "Do you know why you're here?" Mark swallowed hard. "We do." "Then I'll be direct. You tried to sabotage me. You spread rumors, you altered documents, you did everything you could to bring me down." Brittany lowered her eyes. "Ivy, I'm not finished yet." Silence. Ivy went on. "For months you made me question my worth. You made me feel like I didn't belong here." Mark looked like he wanted to disappear. Ivy took a breath. "But do you know what I realized?" They looked at her. "That you didn't do all that because I was unqualified. You did it because you were afraid." Brittany blinked, surprised. "Afraid?" "Yes, afraid I'd prove I was capable, afraid of losing control, afraid of being overshadowed." Brittany opened her mouth but said nothing. Mark finally spoke. "You're right." Ivy looked at him. "I am?" Mark nodded. "I was angry. Angry that Rachel broke up with me, and I took it out on you." Brittany hesitated, then admitted, "I've always been jealous of you, Ivy, since we first worked together. Everyone liked you, and I never had that." Ivy stayed silent for a moment, then she took a deep breath. "You both wronged me, a lot, but I don't want revenge." Brittany and Mark looked at her, confused. "You don't?" "No. I want you to learn from this, to use it as a chance to start over." Mark frowned. "Start over how?" Ivy opened a folder and pulled out 2 envelopes. "You're both fired," Brittany gasped. "Fired? Yes, but not the way you think." Ivy slid the envelopes toward them. "Inside those envelopes are letters of recommendation. I wrote them myself." Mark stared at his envelope, stunned. "Why?" "Because I believe in second chances. You made mistakes, but that doesn't define who you are forever." Brittany started crying. "Ivy, I don't deserve this." "Maybe not, but I choose to forgive you anyway." Mark opened the envelope and read the letter. His eyes filled with tears. You wrote kind things about me," Ivy nodded. "I told the truth. You both have talent. You just need to use it the right way." Brittany wiped her tears. "I'm really sorry, Ivy." "I know." Mark also apologized. "I was a fool, and you didn't deserve any of it." Ivy gave a small smile. "Thank you, but now it's time for both of you to move on and become better people." The 2 of them stood up. Brittany reached out her hand. "Thank you for everything." Ivy shook her hand. "Good luck." Mark also shook Ivy's hand. "You're amazing, and I hope you find all the happiness in the world." "Thank you, Mark." Once they left, Ivy stayed in the room for a moment. She felt light, as if a huge weight had been lifted from her shoulders. The door opened and Derek walked in. "How did it go?" Ivy smiled. "It was freeing." Derek stepped closer and hugged her. "I'm proud of you." "Why?" "Because you chose forgiveness instead of revenge. That takes real strength." Ivy rested her head on his chest. "I didn't want to carry around anger. It's just not worth it." Derek kissed the top of her head. "A person's strength isn't in what they achieve, but in how they choose to forgive." Ivy smiled. "I like that quote. I borrowed it from you." Ivy laughed. "You're getting sentimental. It's your fault, you and this baby." Ivy gently touched her belly. "Best reason ever." As they left the room, Grace was waiting in the hallway. "Well, what happened?" Ivy smiled. "They were let go, but with dignity." Grace blinked. "Dignity? After everything they did?" "Yes, because holding a grudge would only hurt me." Grace shook her head, impressed. "You're better than I am, honey. I would have made a dramatic speech, with background music. Ivy laughed. I thought about it, but forgiveness seemed more powerful. Grace hugged Ivy. You're an inspiration, you know that? Thank you, Grace. So what's next? Ivy looked at Derek and smiled. Now, we focus on what really matters, family. That evening, Ivy and Derek had dinner with Elizabeth. I heard you fired Brittany and Mark today, Elizabeth said. Ivy nodded. Yes, it was necessary. How did it go? Hard, but right. Elizabeth smiled. You're becoming an incredible leader, Ivy. I learned from the best. Elizabeth chuckled. Flatterer. Derek chimed in. My mother's right. You really have a gift for leadership. Ivy shrugged. I'm just doing what I think is right. Elizabeth took her hand. And that's exactly why you're perfect for this family. Ivy felt her eyes well up. Thank you for everything. Elizabeth squeezed her hand. You're my daughter now, and I'll always be here for you. Derek watched the two women, visibly moved. In the days that followed, news of Brittany and Mark's dismissal spread through the hotel. But instead of gossip, there was respect. Staff talked about how fair and generous Ivy had been. She could have humiliated them, but she chose forgiveness. That's what a real leader looks like. Grace, hearing the comments, smiled with pride. My friend is amazing, she whispered. One morning, Ivy was in her office when she got an email. It was from Brittany. Ivy, I just wanted to thank you again. I got an interview at another hotel thanks to your letter. I promised to do better. Thank you for believing in me when I didn't deserve it. Ivy smiled and replied, I'm happy for you, Brittany. Good luck in this new chapter. Shortly after, another email arrived, this time from Mark. Ivy, I was wrong about everything. You're an incredible person. Thank you for giving me a second chance. I wish you and Derek all the happiness in the world. Ivy closed her laptop, content. It was the end of jealousy, the end of scheming, the end of a cycle, and the beginning of something new. When Derek got home that evening, he found Ivy out on the balcony. Are you okay? Ivy smiled. I'm great. What are you thinking about? How much life has changed. Just a few months ago, I was unemployed, lost, with no direction. And now I'm a vice president, a shareholder, a wife, and a soon-to-be mom. Derek hugged her from behind. And the most incredible woman I know. Ivy laughed. You're exaggerating. I'm being honest. Ivy turned to face him. Thank you for everything. Thank you for teaching me how to truly live. They kissed as the city lights sparkled in the background. And in that moment, they both knew the maturity they had gained wasn't just about business or success. It was about choosing love, choosing forgiveness, choosing kindness, and that choice marked the beginning of a new chapter, not just for the company, but for their lives. A chapter filled with peace, love, and family, and all because of a pothole that changed everything. A few months later, spring had arrived in New York. The trees were blooming, the air was fresh, and the city felt renewed. Ivy stood in front of the mirror, adjusting the white dress she had chosen for the ceremony. It wasn't fancy, it was simple, elegant, and perfect for her. Rachel appeared behind her, already dressed as a bridesmaid. You look beautiful. Ivy smiled, gently touching her now round belly. I look like a whale. Rachel laughed. A beautiful whale. Thanks, I think. Rachel adjusted Ivy's veil. Who would have thought, huh? The girl who pulled a wheel out of a hole is now renewing vows with a billionaire. Ivy rolled her eyes, smiling. You'll never let me forget that, will you? Never. It's the best story I've ever heard. Ivy looked at her reflection in the mirror. A year ago, she'd been unemployed, lost, unsure of what to do with her life. And now she had everything. Rachel, thank you for being here. Rachel held her hand. Always, my friend, always. Across town, Derek was getting ready with Elizabeth's help. He was fixing his tie for the 5th time. You're nervous, Elizabeth said, smiling. I'm not. Yes, you are. You've adjusted that tie 4 times. Derek stopped and sighed. Okay, I'm a little nervous. Why? You're already married. I know, but this time it's different. This time it's real. Elizabeth held her son's face in her hands. It was always real, sweetheart, from the moment you really saw her. Derek smiled. Thank you, Mom, for everything. I just gave a little push, you two did the rest. Derek hugged his mother. The best push of my life. The ceremony was held in the garden of a boutique hotel in Manhattan. Small, intimate, just for friends and family. When Ivy arrived, the afternoon sun bathed everything in golden light. The chairs were decorated with white and pink flowers. A small orchestra played softly in the background. Linda and Thomas Morris, Ivy's parents, were in the front row, already in tears. "Mom, the ceremony hasn't even started yet," Ivy joked as she passed by. "Doesn't matter, I'm already emotional," Linda replied, wiping her eyes. Thomas smiled proudly. "You look beautiful, sweetheart." "Thank you, Dad." Grace was there too, sitting with a few colleagues from the hotel. When she saw Ivy, she gave her a thumbs up and whispered, "Go get him, boss." Ivy laughed softly. When the music changed, everyone stood. Derek was at the altar, waiting, and when he saw Ivy walking toward him, his heart skipped a beat. She was glowing. The simple dress, the rounded belly, the shy smile. She was the most beautiful woman he had ever seen. Ivy reached the altar and whispered, "Hi." "Hi," Derek replied, smiling. The officiant began the ceremony. "We are here today to celebrate the love between Ivy and Derek, a love that began in an unexpected way but became real and deep." Ivy and Derek looked at each other, sharing a knowing smile. The officiant continued, "They are already legally married, but today they choose to renew their vows, not out of obligation, but out of love." Derek took Ivy's hand. "Ivy, when we met, I was convinced my life was perfect just the way it was. Organized, predictable, under control." Ivy smiled. "And then I showed up and messed it all up." Derek laughed. "Yes, you messed everything up? Left the lights on? Lost the remote in impossible places? Sang in the shower at 6 in the morning?" Everyone laughed. "But you also brought light, brought laughter, brought life." His voice wavered a bit. "You taught me that life doesn't need to be perfect to be good, and that love doesn't need logic, it just needs to be true." Ivy was crying. "I love you, Ivy, and I promise to keep loving you every day, even when you leave the lights on." More laughter from the guests. Ivy wiped her tears and took a deep breath. "Derek, I was lost when I met you. No job, no direction, no hope. And then you helped my mother. And then she forced me to marry you." Laughter filled the garden. "But you know what's funny? I complained a lot at first, thought it was the worst decision of my life." Derek pretended to be offended. "But I was wrong, because you showed me that love isn't about grand gestures, it's about the little moments." Ivy squeezed his hand. "It's about watching bad movies together. It's about laughing at my terrible jokes. It's about holding my hand when I'm scared." Her voice trembled. "You gave me a family. You gave me a home. You gave me a future." She gently touched her belly. "And soon, we'll give our child the greatest gift of all, a home full of love." Derek pulled Ivy close and kissed her forehead. Elizabeth, in the front row, was crying openly. "My babies," she murmured, holding a tissue. Rachel was also crying, trying to stay composed as the bridesmaid. The officiant smiled. "Derek and Ivy, do you have rings to exchange?" Derek took a simple ring and placed it on Ivy's finger. "With this ring, I renew my promise to you." Ivy did the same. "With this ring, I promise to love you forever." The officiant raised his hands. "Then, by the power vested in me, I now pronounce you husband and wife." Again. Everyone laughed. "You may kiss the bride." Derek pulled Ivy close and kissed her, as the guests clapped and cheered with joy. When they pulled apart, Derek looked at Ivy and said, "Who would have thought? It all started because of a pothole." Ivy laughed, wiping away tears. "And look where we are now. Truly married, with a baby on the way, and a whole life ahead of us." Ivy leaned her forehead against his. The best life. The reception was simple and joyful, tables decorated with flowers, delicious food, soft music. Thomas gave an emotional toast. "To my daughter, who's always had a heart of gold, and to my son-in-law, who was wise enough to see it." Linda added, "And to the pothole that brought you two together." Everyone laughed and raised their glasses. Grace came up to Ivy. "You deserve all of this, dear." "Thank you, Grace, for everything. Now go enjoy your party, and don't forget to save me a slice of cake." Ivy laughed. "I promise." When night fell, Ivy and Derek were on the dance floor, swaying slowly. "Are you happy?" Derek asked. "More than I ever imagined." "Me too." Ivy looked around. Her family, her friends, her husband, all of it represented love, resilience, and second chances. "You know what I realized?" she said. "What?" "That life is all about choices, and I chose to stop and help your mother that day." Derek smiled, "And I'll always be grateful for that." "Me too." They danced in silence for a few more moments. Then Ivy felt something. A kick, small but unmistakable. "Derek." "Yes?" The baby kicked. Derek immediately placed his hand on her belly and felt it. Another kick, his eyes filled with tears. Our son, our daughter. You think it's a girl? Ivy smiled. I'm sure. Derek kissed her gently, and in that moment, surrounded by love and happiness, they both knew this was only the beginning of a family, the beginning of a new journey. And all thanks to one simple act of kindness, because sometimes fate just needs a little nudge, or a stuck wheelchair on the sidewalk. As the celebration went on, Elizabeth watched from a distance, smiling. Her plan had worked better than she ever imagined. She hadn't just found the perfect daughter-in-law. She had brought together two souls who were meant to meet, and now she would soon be a grandmother. Mission accomplished, she whispered, raising her glass. Ivy and Derek kept dancing, unaware of the world around them. There was only the two of them, and the love they had built together. A love born from chaos, strengthened through challenges, and made eternal through choice. The choice to love, the choice to forgive, the choice to believe. And so Ivy Morris and Derek Cooper proved that true love doesn't need a grand beginning. It only needs hearts willing to open and a pothole on the sidewalk. What did you think of Ivy and Derek's story? Leave your thoughts in the comments below. Rate this story from 0 to 10. What score would you give it? Don't forget to subscribe to the channel and turn on notifications so you never miss one of our stories. And make sure to check out more heartwarming stories by clicking right here on the final screen.